Welcome back to the Takeout. There are lots of Americans right now who have artificially lower credit scores, and they're trying to get the reasons for their low credit scores resolved because they think there's some information that the credit bureaus should have that they're not responding to. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau used to help them in that. It's doing much less of that work now, and there's a reason why. According to a ProPublica analysis, several of these large credit bureaus are ignoring systematically these kinds of complaints. Joel Jacobs joins me now. He's a data reporter for ProPublica, and he's got lots of new reporting on this. Joel, explain this to my audience.
Well, thanks so much for having me. So the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, it operates a complaint system where basically consumers can come with their complaints, and then those complaints are forwarded to a company, and the CFPB requires those companies to respond. And more than 5 million complaints were lodged with this system last year. Far and away, the most common complaint is about credit reporting, and things like an error on a credit report, some mistake that somebody feels like should be fixed. And so folks showed the CFPB about this, and we took a look at the data, and what we found is that 2 of the 3 major credit bureaus, so Experian and TransUnion, have really dialed back how often they provide relief to many of these complaints, so make some kind of change. And to cite some figures, Experian provided around 20% of complaints with relief in 2024. That was down to less than 1% in 2025. TransUnion had 80 to 90% of complaints they were providing with relief, and that was down about half over the summer. And this really coincides with the Trump administration's effort to really just basically dismantle the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
And there's one exception to this trend. It's another credit rating agency. Why are they the exception, and how are they the exception?
Right. So there is the third credit bureau, major credit bureau is Equifax, and we didn't see as much of a significant change there. Now they didn't say exactly why, but one notable thing is that the CFPB in the days before the Trump administration came back, the second Trump administration, the CFPB actually entered a consent order, had an enforcement action against Equifax. While it didn't specifically mention complaints, it was about this kind of broader dispute system. So when somebody goes and tries to, claim there's an error on their credit report, the credit bureaus are legally mandated to kind of do an investigation. And the CFPB had found that these investigations that Equifax was doing were basically somewhat superficial, right? They were ignoring documents, to the contrary. They were kind of dismissing disputes when they maybe shouldn't have. And one notable thing we found, though, is that TransUnion was actually going to be subject to potentially to a similar enforcement action. The CFPB had basically lined that up. There were settlement talks, but we found in SEC filings that basically soon after the change in administrations, that enforcement action was dropped.
So when there was a robust
settlement talks were paused.
Right. So when there was a robust push right before the new Trump administration came in, that yielded something that has benefited consumers. And then since then, the other 2 who were untouched by that robust enforcement have peeled back. I want to read something that came from your article. The companies have successfully, for years, let me start here. For years, the CFPB's complaint system has served as a public middleman, forwarding consumer issues to the bureaus, requiring responses, and publishing data showing how companies handled them. But the companies have successfully lobbied the Trump administration to start steering some consumers away from the transparent process and toward their internal systems. 30 seconds, summarize what this means.
Yeah, so basically the credit bureaus say that many of these complaints are more or less frivolous, they're illegitimate, that consumers should be coming directly to the credit bureaus. But it's a much less transparent process when they do that. They don't publish data about how often people get help. And as I noted, there has been an enforcement action, and the CFPB has found that those internal efforts are not effective.
Joel Jacobs, ProPublica, I appreciate it very much.